What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we are checking out the brand new Peavey 65052. Yes, it is a real amp, and no, I did not paint the 2 on the chassis. Let's do it! Alright guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle. What I do is I take awesome high gain amplifiers, overdrives, pickups, guitar cabinets, speakers. I record them with a simple SM57 setup, and I give you guys the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into E-standard thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes that have to sometimes pinch themselves to make sure that this is a reality, you're in the right place. Consider hitting that like button on the way out and subscribing so you don't miss anything else. Thanks! Alright guys, it is my absolute honor and distinct pleasure to essentially be able to unveil this amp to the world. If you've been following my channel for a minute, you know that number one, I'm a massive fan of the 5150 and 6505 line, whether it be the Peavey or the EVH stuff. And two, you will know that I've made a couple videos hinting at a couple new 6505 iterations from Peavey that are supposed to be hitting the market very soon. Well, sitting here beside me, I have the all-new 6505-2 amplifier. This amp features a number of updates. None of them are extremely drastic in any way. Some of them are things that Peavey has wanted to change for a little while, like the aesthetic. That's going to be the first thing that's going to stick out to people. But there are a couple other changes inside the amp and on the back panel, which I will show you guys as well. I do want to say a huge thank you to Peavey and John Fields, the lead designer at Peavey, for sending this out to me. He had given me some of the details of this amp earlier and basically allowed me to share them with you guys, and now I am the first person that gets to show you this amp. And as somebody who grew up loving Peavey amplifiers, to be the first person that gets to show a brand new Peavey amplifier to the world, that's pretty cool to me. So thanks again for the opportunity. But with that being said, just because Peavey was kind enough to send this amp out to me to demo for you guys, I am under no obligation, no contract to fluff this amp in any way. I will give you my 100% honest opinion, as I always do. If that was not the case, I would not have accepted this amp from Peavey, so please keep that in mind. Your boy is here to help you. So looking at the front panel of this amp, there are no differences on the control panel layout whatsoever. It is exactly the same as a 5152 or a 6505 Plus. So I'm not gonna go into the details of that because you should already know what's on there if you're looking at this amp. Aesthetically, Peavey has gone back to the blocky or the triangle logo over here, which I personally have always been a fan of. This logo was essentially updated when Eddie came over to Peavey because he wanted a more modern looking logo. That's what they came up with, and it is now back on the amp. Here in the middle, replacing the old oval Peavey logo, we now have a 6505 in the original font that the 5150 amps contained, and it is now called the 6505-2. It's no longer the 6505 Plus. And then over here we have Hartley Peavey's signature in the corner. So you know, not a huge aesthetic change, obviously. It's still very much in line with all the other 5150 and 6505s, but it kind of goes back to the original design of the 5150 series. And I personally think that this looks better. You may agree or disagree, but Peavey kind of listened to its customer base. A lot of people enjoyed the look of the original 5150s more, so they went back to a similar look. On the back panel, there are a couple of changes. Number one, the power cable is now detachable. It's no longer attached to the back of the amp. Number two, this is going to be a big benefit if you are a professional or touring musician. There is now an international voltage selection on the back. So I think that this may be a first for Peavey. I could be wrong. You guys can correct me if I am. Every Peavey amp that I own, none of them have a selectable voltage on the back. This same amp can be used pretty much anywhere in the world because it has international voltage selection. So most people, this will not make a difference, but if you are a touring musician and you don't want to have to buy different amps for Europe and the US, as that's not a reality for most of us, you now have the option of international voltage selection. So that's a nice feature for the pro and the touring musician. Okay, now inside the amp, this is where things get it a lot more interesting because Peavey has went ahead and made some changes to the inside of the amp. Most notably, the transformers are different. The transformers have been changed from the classic 5150 6505 design to the Invective transformers. The Invective transformer was based off of what Peavey felt was the best example of an older 5150 transformer. They worked with Misha on the transformer to change and tweak the sonic qualities just a little bit to get what everybody felt was the best tone and the best feel out of those transformers. So those transformers are now in both the 6505 1992 original, which you will also see coming up at some point on my channel, and the 6505-2 that I have sitting here next to me. On top of that, the heater connections to the power tubes have been changed because they were somewhat prone to failure in the past on the 5150 and 6505. Those have been updated, so that should no longer be an issue. The screen grid resistors have had the values up to 700 ohm. That took place a little while ago within the 6505 line, but I just figured that I would mention it. So the screen grid resistors have been upgraded to a more proper spec for current production tubes. The power section on the amp has also been changed in that you can now install EL34s. The pinout is correct for EL34 power tubes. Now, you won't be able to get the proper bias range for EL34 power tubes because this amp has a very small bias range. Traditionally, that has not been changed, but John did let me know that when they designed the 6534 Plus, all of the power amp boards that contain the power amp tubes have been changed to accommodate EL34 power tubes. So if you want to drop EL34 power tubes in this, it will not require any modification. I'm not saying that they will run perfectly in spec because more than likely they will not, but it is able to take EL34 power tubes without modification now. So on top of that, the last thing that John mentioned to me is that some of the internal components have been upgraded to higher quality components. He did not give me a breakdown or a rundown of what all was changed. I think that there were numerous changes, but technically, the circuit is the same. They didn't change any of the circuit values. They didn't change any of the pot values inside the amp. They just changed some of the quality of components inside the amp. So with that being said, I did get a chance to shoot this out with my USA 6505 Plus yesterday when I first got this amp in. There are some sonic differences. They are subtle, but they are there, and I will kind of explain those to you guys a little bit, and I will also do a 6505 Plus shootout with the new 6505-2 so that I can show you those sonic differences. Now, somebody already pointed out to me that in the past I have mentioned multiple times that sometimes the differences in certain... Hi, buddy. What are you doing? What are you doing? Huh? What do you want? You gotta go upstairs, man. You gotta go upstairs. Don't knock my cameras over. So there may be differences in tolerances from the same amp off of the same line on the same day enough so that you can hear some sonic differences. So without me having played multiple of these amps side by side, it may very well be that most of the sonic differences come from tolerances, but from what John told me, there will be some sonic differences based on the transformers alone. And truthfully, I can hear them. It's not a placebo thing, and I will absolutely show that to you guys when I shoot those two amps out. So with all the talking out of the way, let's finally get to some tones. That initial clip that you guys heard, I was using the Electric Eye Mud Killer to boost the red channel to 6505-2, and I was using my Balaguer Espada with evergreen pickups, which are like a hot PAF. They're not high output. The amp is going into the Mesa Traditional 4x12 cab with the original vintage 30s in it. I have nothing else going on in the signal chain, but we're gonna go ahead and go over to the green channel and we're gonna dial in some tones. A lot of people have asked me, because I did post about this amp on Facebook, if Peavey have updated the green channel in any way, if they have made the cleans better. No. And honestly, a lot of guys are asking me why they didn't add more features to this, like a built-in noise gate, a built-in boost, a recordable speaker out, blah, blah, blah. They already did that. They called it the Invective. That amp exists. If you guys want those features, they are in the Invective. Peavey basically said, we want to keep this amp the same, because if they add those features to the 6505 line, well then essentially the Invective becomes redundant, because that's basically what they did with that amp. So no, the green channel, the red channel, none of the circuits have been upgraded or updated or changed in any way. They will sound the same, essentially, with most of the differences that you hear sonically coming from the transformers. So with all that being said, let's hear the green channel. All right, so same classic crunch tone that you would expect from the 6505 Plus channel. It sounds great with pretty much everything at noon. Over here we've got the resonance and presence set, as you can see here on camera, and I'm just gonna bump the gain up because we're here for the high gain tones. One thing I have noticed about this amp versus my 6505 Plus is that it just overall seems like there is more of a mid presence and clarity. Again, it's subtle, but it is there. And it really just seems to kind of almost take the blanket off the speaker's effect without making the amp overly harsh, in my opinion. All right, so you're not going to notice a huge difference here. I have noticed on this channel, I don't really ever use this channel, and people kind of criticize me if they like the green channel over the red channel, so I'm going to try to get a really cool tone dialed in. I've noticed on this channel, when you really pump the mids up, it actually gives it more of a Marshall style mid-range. The mids are more pointed, they're a little spikier. And this is just a great overall channel if you're going for the classic rock thing. It actually sounds quite good for that type of sound. Or if you want to do kind of like the Marshall punk rock thing, it does that as well. We're going to pump that gain up even more. All right, so we've got a nice present mid-forward tone going on. Let's go ahead and kick in the Ibanez TS9 Tube Screamer, as a lot of you guys will be familiar with how that'll affect this channel and this amp. So it sounds a little bit fatter. If we pull those mids back to a more normal level, you kind of get more of your standard Peavey voicing going on there. The mids are still present, they're still forward, but they're not insane. So I'm gonna keep them at 6. We'll play one more riff and we'll go over to the red channel or the lead channel. So the green channel, as usual on these amps, a little thicker, a little fatter and broader sounding. If you think that the red amp kind of suffers from being a little bit anemic, as some people would describe it, or being too thin or too compressed, the green channel is probably where it's going to be at for you. So let's go over to the red channel. I still have the settings as they were in my initial sound clip, my initial demo. So I'm actually going to just kind of put things at noon a little bit. We'll tweak the tones slightly, but I'm not going to go crazy. This video is more or less just kind of showing and explaining the differences and how this amp differs from the 6505 Plus or the 5152. So here's no boost. All right, so we've got a decent amount of gain already. It could use a little bit more thickness, but overall I think the way it sounds here is pretty damn good tonally. All right, so that thickens it up a little bit. There's still a good amount of gain on tap on this amp. When I'm running a boost with it, I typically am running it between 4 and 5, depending on how hot the pickup is. So it does seem, again, a little bit more mid-forward. There's a little bit more aggressiveness to the upper mids of this amp, whereas the Peavey sound is typically a little bit more round in the mids, even on the original 5150 as well as the 5152. The 5152 has always been known for being a little tighter and a little bit more mid-forward than the original, and in this amp, I don't think the mids are drastically shifted. There just seems to be a little bit more bite and aggression to the upper mids here. And there also seems to be a little bit more string clarity. Now that could be due to the transformers. I am pushing this amp at a decent volume. We're at 2 out of 10. If you know anything about the master volume sweep on the Peavey 5150 or 6505, you know that that volume comes on fast, and usually you don't need to be above 3. Sometimes you get it all the way up to 4 depending on the venue or where you're playing. But even then, that's insanely loud. So we are pretty loud here in the room, and the differences kind of become slightly more apparent as the volume goes up. So as that is right there, it's a little bit muffled sounding. So let's get the mids and highs. We've got the classic 666 settings. Sounds pretty good to me overall. Like I said, there just seems to be a tad bit more clarity, a tad bit more mid-forwardness. Let's get that gain up to 5 on the preamp. So overall, yeah, it sounds nice and bright, nice and clear. It's not harsh. One thing I am noticing is it seems a tad less fizzy on the top end as well. I don't know if anything has been done to alter that, or if that's just a result of the transformers and the upgraded components on the inside of the amp. I truly have no idea, but when I compared it again back to back with my 6505 Plus, that was another slight difference that I did notice. So let's go ahead and pull some of the mids out, because this amp does seem a little bit more mid forward, and see how it sounds with the mids scooped down to, say, 3. All right, so it's still mid-forward enough, but this really seems to affect the upper mids, the dial does. So here it is with the mids back at 6. So overall, yeah, that's going to sit you in a mix a little bit better. These amps have traditionally never had an issue cutting in any sort of mix, even when they're sitting next to a Marshall or something. So I imagine that these will sit out front of the mix even more so than they have traditionally, if this is kind of the signature tone print of the amp now. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to kick on that Ibanez TS9 again, and I'm going to lower that gain back down, and I'm going to pull the highs and the mids back, because it is going to be considerably brighter with the Tube Screamer on. Nice and clear, punchy, everything that you love about the 5150 and 6505 still here in this amp. It sounds incredible. I don't really know what else to say at this point. The amp sounds great to me. Let's scoop those mids out a bit. We've still got the Tube Screamer on. Let's see how it sounds with the mids down a little bit more. Sounds great to me. If you want to get rid of some of that Peavey, signature mid-range, it is a little bit even more present on this amp. Just dial those mids back and you'll be just fine. It smooths the amp out a little bit. You can also pull back the presence if you like. You guys know I like my tones a little bit brighter, so I'm going to keep it like that. I'm going to go ahead and grab a guitar with active pickups in it real quick, just so you guys can see how it responds to the active pickups. Okay guys, I now have my LTD EC1001T with the 5766 EMG pickup complement in it. Let's see how that sounds. I've touched nothing on the amp. That is pretty much your classic like metal and hardcore tone from the late 90s, early 2000s that everyone here should be very, very familiar with at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull that gain down because these do have a considerable bump in output. I'm gonna bump those mids up and the highs up a little bit, add a little more low end. Hey, have I ever mentioned to you guys that I love the 5150 and 6505 family of amps? This thing sounds really, really freaking good. So what else can I do to show you guys this amp? Let's do a drop. Last but not least, let's do drop C and then we will end this demo. I think the amp sounds incredible. Slight differences, but very much the same amp that you all know and love, or hate if you don't like this amp. But I personally love it. Okay guys, we're in drop C, last riff. Alright guys, that's going to be it for me today on the brand new Peavey 65052. What did you think about this amplifier? I'm dying to know. Put it down in the comments and I'll meet you guys down there to chat about it. Unfortunately, at the time of this video, Peavey does not have a release date and they do not have a price set for this thing. This is a very early demo, but as soon as that info comes available, I will be sure to share it on my Facebook page, so be sure that you guys join my Facebook group and my Discord server. That way you guys don't miss any announcements. If I get the news first, I will absolutely share it with you guys. If you like the video, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing on your way out. It greatly helps me out, and I would love to have you guys come back for more Peavey, EVH, 5150, 6505, high gain amp goodness. If you want to support the channel, down in the description of this video are my Sweetwater affiliate links and my Patreon. Consider visiting either of those, helping me out, and I would appreciate you forever. Kyle here again. Hope to see you guys next time. Thanks so much. I forgot my tagline at the end of the video again. It's been a while since I've done one of these. Have a great day. Bye.